Over to you, JC.
Thanks everyone for signing up for this AI podcasting strategy. It is AI podcasting for selling. And so in the conversations I've had with the 100 of you who RSVP'd, I would say about 50%, 50 of you wanted to understand, what does AI podcasting have to do with selling? So what I'm going to teach today is a sales playbook where the podcast guest is your ideal customer profile. They're someone who could buy your services, who you think is already a warm lead. And the point of the podcast is not to get, a million followers in 10 years where YouTube will pay you 1 cent for each view. The point of the podcast is to have a fun conversation with someone who could potentially benefit from your services and hire you as fractional or whatever, consulting and other pitching you're doing. So I wanted to share a video about this whole process. So I'm going to cue that up. And as we're waiting, I did want people to comment in the chat who your ICP is, who is your lead, how would you find them, what are their demographics, things like that. And then so we'll use that in the AI part after the video. But I have the video queued up and hopefully the sound will play. If the sound doesn't play, just let me know.
No sound from my side.
No sound?
Yeah, no sound.
Yeah, no sound.
Okay, so great. Stop share. I think when I share, okay, share sound.
Hate selling this.
Did you hear that? Okay.
Yes, that's right.
Thank you so much. This almost never works.
It's a little louder, though. It's kind of on the quiet side.
Okay.
Hate selling, this AI class is for you. Imagine a new approach. Be an entrepreneur who generates leads through a podcast, featuring potential clients as guests. No begging, just shared problems. Give the gift of fame for free. Your prospects will engage, sharing their goals, hopes, and aspirations. A 50% take rate, no cold calling. Join Podcast Boss, a new course by Callmejz to learn AI shortcuts for podcasting. Spend only 2 hours a week and fill your pipeline for months. In this 2-hour class, network with entrepreneurs, create, edit, and market your podcast. By the end, you'll publish a podcast and receive valuable feedback. First class is on February 19th, 9 a.m. EST. Limited spots available. Don't miss this chance to grow your business and enjoy selling. Sign up now.
All right. So I'm going to teach the free version of this in this next hour. And my point is that on the podcast, you'll have your ICP. Before the podcast, you'll talk to them about what they want to talk about and do a qualifying call. And then after the podcast, you'll have about 5 minutes to sell yourself again. Remind them of your services, remind them of any problems that they talked about on their podcast and how you might be the solution to that problem. All right, so let's look in the comments. And your ICPs are universities, real estate brokers, early stage founders, CROs, agencies, and academic advisors. Okay. Well, since two of you are looking for universities, let's use Microsoft Copilot to find where your ICP is already engaging with other podcasts so that you can find your ICP, but also figure out what kind of podcast you can have in competition with other podcasts. Oh, an ICP is an ideal customer profile. Thanks for that question, Lai Tan. All right, I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Can you see this Luma invite that you all signed up for?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. So in Copilot, which is free, Microsoft Edge, I'm going to ask what podcasts are university? Is it professors listening to? I think it's professors. So this will scour the AI land, but also like SEO, and tell you the professor is in, more or less. So it seems like professors listen to podcasts about their topic, but then also about higher education in general. So you could create a podcast in a topic or about higher ed in general and target the same people that these podcasts are targeting. And you can have these podcasters be on your podcast. So I think the main mistake that I've made in selling is to connect with too many people who are just like me, like not my competitors, but people I feel like understand what I do from a product perspective, understand what I do from a growth perspective. And it's very tempting because, we all sing the same song. But through podcasting, I've really learned to narrow down that ICP where I still connect with my potential competitors, but only if they can teach me something that I don't know. So if they've already started a podcast, I want to learn from them. If they have a revenue pipeline playbook, I want to learn from them. But otherwise, I avoid podcasting my competitors. So let's say you're going to start this higher ed podcast about, let's say, teaching AI at a MBA and college level. And so the next step is to come up with a website. So Karina, let me know if I am violating the terms, but I'm just showing my website as an example of how people should set up their podcast website. So
Okay.
from my website, you can go to podcasts. And so you would create your own website. And the website would have all the episodes. So I've had, more than 50 in the last year. It has been really fun, actually not very hard to get here. And the website should also have a could this be you? So for your ICP guests, this is the question that they're always going to answer. I always ask them, as an AI founder, do you talk to users and build features for your users? So this keeps it really simple for me. I always ask the same question, and it keeps it really simple for my guests because they know what to answer. They can look at past podcasts I've done and figure out how they're going to answer in a way that is consistent and helps them sell. So we've got this website, and then moving on to the pitch. So Karina, I'm going to share my LinkedIn just because this is how I reached out to my ICP. My podcast is only about AI video, and Andy is a product leader in Adobe. I think he was acqui-hired. So his company was a social media software tool that Adobe acquired. And so I asked him, do you want to be on my podcast? I just shared my website with him. And it wasn't a lot of cold calling, wasn't like, 10 emails in a drip funnel. He just said, we should be good to schedule something mid-June. It was that easy because a lot of people think that they can't get these enterprise clients, or, what excuse do you have to talk to these enterprise ICPs? And this is your excuse. He was relaunching Adobe Express, and he needed as many eyeballs as possible to make the launch successful in the beginning. So he said yes, and still all free. Now I'm going to show you the planning call that I had with him. In my free calendar, I talk about I show all the dates where he can book the planning call with me. And I talk about the price. It's free, but I also talk about who my audience is, what the 50 episodes I've done have included in terms of companies and ICPs. Talk about the discussion. I'm going to ask you one question about AI, and if you talk to users when building your AI software. And so he scheduled the call with me, I think like the next day. And so on the call, what you're going to do is talk about the title of his podcast. So I have a podcast with Henning, who did a Lunch and Learn, I think, last time, and he's going to be on my podcast. I'm going to be on his podcast. So the focus of the prep call is really to nail down this title. The title should include a hashtag and any keywords that he needs to be found for, so that his ICPs can find him. And so once we nail down the title, I go to this planning document that I have with him, still free, on Google Docs. And so it includes his content, which is, the words for SEO, the title we just came up with. Later on, I'll update any agenda items if he wants to change that one question I always ask. I'll talk about the streaming. There's a contract, my marketing channels, and a referral. So if he gives me a referral, in addition to himself being my ICP, if he refers me to someone else, I'll give him like 10%. And so the really important part of this agenda is making sure that they connect their streams. And I'll talk about that again, but the best reach is really getting them to connect their LinkedIn and YouTube streams so that LinkedIn notifies people, hey, Henning's on this podcast, go RSVP. So at this point, we're still in that pre-planning call. And in that call, we've nailed down the title, some of the expectations for what he has to sign off on in the contract. And then here's my calendar. So my calendar is booked through April. I have 2 months of podcasts. I speak or I host every week. And on that planning call, you want to get him to accept the time, right? So there isn't any kind of confusion about, oh, I can't make that time, or he's in, a different time zone. A lot of my clients are in Pacific time and I'm in Eastern time. So in that planning call, he's agreeing to the title and he has accepted your calendar invite. So this is, I think we're almost done with planning. The next step, and there is a lot of software to stitch together. The next step, I have templates for all of this. So the next step is to go to StreamYard and set up your event. So in StreamYard, you have all these destinations that you can set up. It can stream to I think up to 10. This is the part that's paid. It's only $20 a month and well worth it because you get a recording in addition to all these live streams. Go to the home and you can create an event. It's going to be a live stream. So his ICPs can come in and, he can spark, inform, and confront them. I'm going to connect my streams. He's going to connect his streams. The title you already agreed on. This goes here, and all the SEO goes here. And you can schedule it for later. I always do Wednesdays at noon Pacific. And then you can customize for each destination. So each destination will have the same title, description, and cover art. And I'll show you what this looks like on my next podcast with the AR VR leader. So here are my channels on LinkedIn. This is the title, this is the SEO, here is the podcast art. So we're halfway there. I know this is a lot of technology, so I'm seeing some eye rubs, but we'll have time for questions in about 5 minutes. So once you've scheduled all of that, then on LinkedIn, it shows up as a event. So I pin the event to my featured, and a lot of you don't have anything pinned to your featured, and most of you don't have video. So this will generate a video after the podcast is over. So in this, like I said before, Ryan streaming to his stream is the most important part, because LinkedIn will notify Ryan's ICP. Oh, Ryan's going live in a week. Ryan's going live in an hour. Ryan's live. Ryan went live. Go look at the recording. But then there's also this secret hack of inviting his ICPs to give him that extra boost. So since he's a augmented reality, virtual reality leader, his ICP is going to be in marketing. So there is this bulk invite feature, and I go lazy scroll. I make sure I get all of them because I have, thousands of contacts. And LinkedIn throttles you to about 500 invites per week. So I try to hit that like maximum as much as I can. And I'm going to bulk invite these 49 people in one button. And so they'll start to sign up and get notifications as well. So great, we are done with the pre-planning. And then we're gonna move on to the day of the event. So the day of the event, I always like to get people about 15 minutes into 15 minutes early into the studio, because very few people have done a live stream video podcast. And so even if they're the most seasoned pitcher or entrepreneur, they have questions. So we enter the studio early. We haven't gone live yet. I will see Ryan's streams pop up here, but I've already seen my 5 streams, and I can put myself on the stage. And then I talk him through this comment section. So his ICP will be commenting live questions and, hurrahs for him. So I'm going to show this to him. I'm going to read it to him. And the confidence coaching I give is, if you don't know the answer, you can just be like, oh, Jay-Z, that's like another podcast altogether. There's never any pressure to answer a question live that makes you feel unprepared. And so it's a baller move to be like, oh, I speak so often, we can dedicate a whole another podcast to it. So that's the fear that even like the most seasoned speakers have, is some unforeseen question. And it's okay, like skip over them. There are so many comments that come in. It's okay to just like, move on to the next one, or direct message me and, I'll answer it for you in a offline one-on-one. So that is StreamYard. And after you are done with the live session, remember I talked about pitching, right? So you have 5 minutes after you go live, after you kind of close the public broadcast, you're still on this kind of Zoom video platform. And this is where you pitch again. I saw that you're having problems with marketing or sales. You're a university professor. I see you're having problems with enrollment. Like, this is how my service can help you. This is my solution to your problem. And so most people are super excited. Like, they've just talked about themselves. They've just talked to ICPs. They're super excited to book another demo. Sometimes they'll like want to talk your ear off and continue talking in this conversation. So book those demos, book those follow-ups, like offer a referral fee, like continue the conversation with this very excitable and warm lead at this point. All right. So I think at this point you could be done, but a lot of people want more. So what happens after this point is that you can go to these AI video editing tools. So there's, hundreds of them. I've qualified, I'd say like my top 5. And Minvo, they were on my podcast last week. So it's the fastest editing speed. This is a podcast I did with John Arms, who teaches fractional at Voyager U. And Minvo cut the podcast into, I would say, like 20 snippets. So there are 21-minute clips here. And as you all know on social, the video really matters. Like the text doesn't matter, the images don't matter. Just post like a 3-second to 30-second video and people will engage. So you've got about 20 of these now. It's going to default to portrait for TikTok, but since we're all selling on LinkedIn, you're going to go to this landscape aspect ratio. You can go to edit and take out any words that were wrong. Like it should be Voyager, not Voyage. You can cut, supersize the text, add a new line, but also be on brand, right? So the background color and the text color are all things that you can change. And then you post. So I also like this tool because it integrates the editing and the posting. So I've set up my YouTube and my LinkedIn channels. It'll write a caption based on the transcript, so you don't have to write it yourself. And after it generates the caption, then you can post it across all your socials. So let's say you've got 20 clips across 5 socials. That's like 100 touch points right there. You've got a calendar for like a whole month of content. And you can schedule this, like, you can schedule 1 video a day on, different channels, the same video every day. And you're done for the month. And then people still want more, right? So if the video is not enough, then I go to my Substack, and in my blog post for my newsletter, because email is the highest converting, don't only focus on LinkedIn, I can get for free this transcript view. So after I view transcript, here is the entire transcript for free. And then I go into Copilot again for free. And I say, summarize page into 10 bullet points. And it does its magic. It takes about a minute. I will copy this whole summary back into my Substack. So, I've copied in all the videos, the video clips, and then for SEO, for the robot, for ChatGPT, I copy in all of the summary that's being generated for free here. So I show up for the human and I show up for the robot. And then last, Substack creates an RSS feed for free to Spotify. So here are all my past episodes. They show up in about 1 hour. So now you've got, all these different users on all these different platforms. And you look like a professional. You look like a thought leader. You become an equal to all your ICPs that you're pitching. They will ask you to go back on your podcast, and they will ask you to have a demo and book the next call. So it's really a fun way of giving before you take, of having that really intimate and high energy conversation with your target customer and your prospects. So I think that's the half-hour mark. So we have a whole hour. Karina, should we open up for questions?
Sure. If anyone has a question, please raise your digital hand And JC, there was also questions in the chat. But people, why don't you just come on, raise your hand and you can ask them instead of JC having to read through everything. Adam, I see you have a question recently. Do you want to come on and ask it? Okay, Bob, why don't you go ahead?
Alrighty. First of all, I've heard webcasting and podcasting conflated. What's the difference between webcasting and podcasting?
Oh, I think there could be a couple things. Well, let me ask you, what is webcasting? Because I actually haven't heard of that.
Webcast is when there's video. Podcast is when it's just audio. That was my interpretation of it until recently, when everybody's just started using podcasts for everything, including video.
Yes. So traditionally, podcasts are long form. People like to talk for like hours and it's very deep. But now, because video is so much more engaging, a lot of podcasters are adding AI video to their old audio only streams. And so that's a way to revitalize existing content. But if you're starting new, I really recommend starting with like a video podcast. What did you call it?
Webcasting.
Webcasting. Yeah, because people like to see your face. It builds a lot of trust. For my clients, they usually have watched at least one or two of my existing video streams and they're like, I already know you. I know the glasses. Like it really feels like you. Do you think webcasting could be for you? I think for, people who are not used to being on camera all the time, they can be a little shy. So I'm asking if you feel like that's an option for you at all.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. I have no problems being on camera. So we can talk more about that later. We're having another meeting this afternoon anyway. So the other question I had was, do you need just a regular LinkedIn or do you need a LinkedIn Sales Navigator to do what you were doing?
Oh, regular LinkedIn.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. And I think, people get freaked out. Oh, it's live, but like, we were on Zoom meetings like 24/7 for COVID, right? It's really the same.
Okay.
Great question. I think Cassandra's next, or Karina, how do you want to do this?
Yeah, Cassandra's next.
Okay.
I just wanted to circle back to what you had on your website. I don't think I fully understood like what you were doing there. So I just wanted to ask about that. Like, what is this page doing?
So this page has two main things. In the beginning, you're going to have the question that you ask everyone. Oops, I don't know why my mouse is flickering. So this is, could this be you? Like, I am a podcast seeking founders who gain paying customers by talking to users. So if you do any of the following, you can be on my podcast. If you're an AI entrepreneur who talks to founders, like I want to talk to you because I've talked to people like you in the past.
Okay. And do you share this page with like people that you reach out to?
Yeah, this is the first thing that they see.
Cool. And then like one more question.
Yeah.
The example that you showed us reaching out on LinkedIn, it looked like you were kind of like describing like past guests and stuff. But if you're starting from scratch and you don't have a podcast, like how would you go about like making that pitch? Like maybe it's you're asking for your first guest.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So my first guests were peers or one level above me who wanted to be famous. They're already posting. They actually don't care if you've had other people on your podcast because they want that boost of fame. So, in your ICP, they're going to people who are like secretive, maybe high net worth. I wouldn't start with them. So start with the people who are like already out there.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, that's a great question. Torsten, I think, is next.
Yes, great. Thank you. Really, really impressive. What do you do when you invite from your LinkedIn profile, if I saw that correctly, or from StreamYard, and you have all those contacts that you invite. Obviously, that is now your direct networks, which it belongs to your ICPs. What if none of your connections are actually the ICPs of your guests? And how do you match that up? So can they also invite people, or how does it work?
Yeah, so as a guest, they can also invite people. So in the speaker profile, you'll see that Ryan is tagged as a speaker. And so he'll have the co-host editing abilities to invite, like the bulk invite as well. Do you see like Ryan Smith?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So he's already reposted like this, he reposts this every week until the event. And then in the event, he'll have that access to share on LinkedIn and invite in that bulk way as well. But I think that's a good question. Sometimes you're selling to people who are selling to people that you don't have any connection to. So if that's a good way for you to help them or help yourself, if it's a good way for you to help yourself, if those people could be your potential targets, like why not like start inviting them to connect, commenting on their posts, like warming up the lead. I think it's a great way to expand your network. When people get a message, even if it's like an in-mail to a person who's not connected to you at the first degree, they'll often accept it because being a host somehow connotes this like authority and thought leadership. Like no one says no, really. But maybe it's just the qualifying, right? Like making sure that they would be your target audience too. You're welcome. I think Ian is next.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that I'm mostly involved in very complex sales, which could take 6 months to complete. How applicable do you think this technique is to those kinds of sales?
Yeah, so I've had salespeople interested in my class. And so for them, it's a way to build the relationship, I would say like a year in advance, right? So who like the big whale clients would be. And so you want to start getting to know them before the conference, like before the cold calls, like before any other touch points. Like why not stand out and make them famous? Because no one else is, right? Like everyone else is just like, buy my list of features, like, take the call. So I think for a longer sales cycle, you have to have your like list very curated for people who want to be famous, who are going to be a main budget decision maker.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you think? Like, how do you think this?
I don't think, I have not yet spoken to many of our prospects, but I don't think any of them want to be famous. I mean, they're academic administrators. They're the kind of people who like to fade into the background for the most part, unless they're trying to, shoot for some kind of a higher position at their university. But my guess is that they're probably not podcast consumers in general, and especially not shorts and things like that. And just they tend to be very conservative overall. So I would probably, if I was going to be reaching out to them, I'd probably prefer a phone call. Emails don't seem to work very well these days. And other kinds of online contact techniques don't seem to be working, including LinkedIn, are just not working as well as they used to. So my usual approach right now would be to find out what their phone number is and just call them and then go for numbers. And I'm about to launch a customer research, program, and that's the approach that I'm going to take. I'm not going to use email. Not going to use podcasts, not going to use any kind of online forum. I might use LinkedIn groups, might use Slack groups to meet people, but I think the phone is the way to go now, based on what I've seen recently. And also in our case, we need to connect with senior government officials. And again, they don't seem to me to be very likely consumers of these kinds of media. Could be wrong, but that's just my guess.
I think it depends on your audience, really, like, right? So like, what kind of service do you sell that the consumers don't?
I mean, it's actually kind of connected to this in a way. I mean, we run an online school So we teach content creation live. So we have instructors in Hollywood and other places, and we've signed agreements with various universities and colleges to provide our courses live instruction, no videos, right? So it's delivered 24 hours a day around the world. And again, these people, like, they don't make decisions in 5 minutes, right? These kinds of things take a long time to work out. And often you have to have like several meetings before anything will happen, right? So I'm not saying I'm not interested in this approach, but I'm not yet convinced that it would work for our prospects. I could be wrong. I mean, things are changing obviously very rapidly. I mean, our own business is connected with, influencer culture, influencer marketing, which is growing very rapidly. There's no doubt about that. But it's just that there's a bit of a disconnect between what we're selling and the kind of people that are the decision makers in the universities and colleges that we have to deal with, and in the government levels. So that's my dilemma, I guess, right now. But I'm certainly interested in experimenting. And the other point I made it in the chat, is I listen to a lot of podcasts, but I've never listened to a podcast from somebody that was trying to sell me something. Like, to me, it just doesn't compute. Like, why would I listen to that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the podcast, you're not selling on the podcast. You're selling
Right.
5 minutes after. So on the podcast, it's not about you. It's about this professor. And wait, so you're saying you're selling to administrators or
yeah, academic advisors, like those are whoever makes the decisions about what course will be offered to students within a university. I mean, you may know that many universities now buy their courses from outside providers, like a big company called 2U, about to go bankrupt actually, but they were big. And they, for example, did the online MBA for USC, right? So USC didn't even create their own MBA. They just licensed it from 2U. So we're essentially going to be working with companies like 2U and others similar to them, and or selling directly to universities that want to add our curriculum to their programs. Right.
Yeah,
so the people that make decisions are senior people at the university.
I hear you. It's a threaded sales cycle, but the professors can influence the academic advisors to buy, right? So I teach adjunct, I teach AI design thinking, and I definitely advise like my university president on software and, key vendor purchases to make my class scale, increase his enrollment, increase, visibility for grant applications in the nonprofit sector. So what do you think about like professors being your target?
That makes sense. I mean, I'm sort of in conversation with a lot of professors. I mean, usually they're unbelievably time pressed. So I don't know, how much time do you devote to listening to podcasts yourself, other than what you're working on?
Oh, well, I do listen to a lot of solopreneur, fractional influencer podcasts, but I think they're not listening, right? This is a chance for them to sell their class, to increase enrollment. So as a professor, I teach a flipped classroom where my students are highly involved in hands-on workshopping.
Right.
And so I'm used to people asking me questions, and I love like talking about what I teach. Like I love talking about AI. So I think professors want peer review. They want like, journal placement. They want grants, and they're always applying like publish or perish. So I don't know. I think professors would like eat this up.
Interesting. Okay, well, that's a very useful perspective. So I'm going to give that some thought. But thanks for that, and thanks for outlining the process. It's very impressive.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you pointed that out, because the buyer probably has like 4 other decision makers in their ear. So it's perhaps like the slow and steady approach of going to those other decision makers before aligning them to go to the buyer. Like you wouldn't go to the buyer, right? Like your professor guests would go to the buyer.
Got it. That's very interesting. Great. Thank you.
No, thank you for the question. I like the challenging questions, so bring it on. Is Claudine next, and then Latrice, I think.
Hi, JC. Thank you for hosting this, and obviously to the fractional community, Fractionals United. So I think somebody else had a similar question in the chat earlier, which is, software and hardware requirements. So it seems like you're doing the entire recording in StreamYard, and then you're post editing in one of your top 5 favorite post editing tools, and then proliferating from there to channels. Have you encountered any issues with hardware or connection or any gotchas on that front?
Oh yeah, so my hardware, I use this Yeti microphone, and I think it's like $100. It's excellent. Other hardware, your computer has to be able to handle the streaming without like blowing up. So there's a lot of GPUs. It's like great to have a landline, but I think the first podcast, it's going to be just like any Zoom call. So I wouldn't worry too much about the hardware until you have like panelists, like 4 panelists all coming in at the same time with different feeds. Like you could even podcast through your mobile phone. So there are lots of like mobile podcasting apps where your guest is mobile and you're mobile, and it's like a 5-minute conversation. So was there anything specific about hardware that you wanted to ask about, like any concerns specifically?
No, just that there are signs that I'm going to need a new laptop. Okay. And so since I'm going to do the research anyway, I thought I would just ask. Thanks.
Yeah. I'm not a gearhead, even though I work in technology. I actually just like to try one episode and see what happens. Like, I don't expect you all to buy all the gear before you start. I think that's actually like what people use to delay the process. You really could publish next week. So I encourage you to just go with what you have. It's a good question. All right, Latrice.
My question, thank you. First of all, this has been absolutely fantastic. I think it's really, really helpful. So huge gratitude. My question is kind of an add-on to what the previous question. When you have the guests, how do you kind of navigate them through the audio quality? Have you ever had any issues with, their audio quality? Do you I was on a podcast where, usually I just talk into the machine or have like, a headset that I use, but one podcast that I was a guest on, they actually sent me like a headset, and I was like, should we be doing this? Like, what is your take on that? That seems very expensive, by the way, just for the record.
Yeah, definitely. That's why that 15 minutes before going live is important. So StreamYard will play a sound and you have to be able to hear it. The guest has to be able to hear it. Usually I don't like send, people ask me to send the glasses actually before they ask me to like send the microphone. So I would say like any, like clip on, like not clip on, just like any, headphone is fine. I will say that closing all the windows, turning off all the beeps and notifications, not having LinkedIn open, not having any other tabs open, because you can definitely create an echo if you're running your podcast and the LinkedIn live stream simultaneously. So I'd say it's mostly just about turning everything else off. Yeah, good question. Bob and Cassandra, do you have additional questions?
Yeah, I raised my hand again, but Bob, you go ahead, because yours has been up.
Okay, so I just want to make a quick comment when it comes to video. When you're selling, understand that the decision to buy is an emotional decision that's backed up by rationality. Okay, so the probability of you being able to get emotion through just audio is high. It's way higher than it would be if you were using just an email. But imagine the emotion you can put through if you're actually using video. So if a word is worth a word, a picture is worth 1,000 words, imagine how many words a video is worth. So if you can actually get your emotion, your authentic emotion through in the video, the probability of you actually being able to influence the buyer increases exponentially. So I'm all for using any kind of a video type of application here. A lot of people are afraid of it. Don't be. It's how you actually connect. And in terms of what you can get through in 20 to 30 seconds, huge as compared to just doing it in an email or something like that. So I just wanted to make that comment. That's all.
Yeah, I think, Bob, you sent me a video and it was really, just so easy to relate to you. And I felt like I knew you. So have you used any deepfake videos?
Deepfake? No, I never used deepfake, ever. Everything's authentic.
Yeah, I think we talked about that too. So there is this idea of deepfake AI podcasting, and I have not seen good results with that, but I think it's fun to play with it with a very technical audience. So if you're selling to a CTO or someone in AI and you make a deepfake and you ask them what they think about it, that is going to be a higher conversion than if you just like post it, right? So, but I'm curious if anyone has like gotten more sales with a deepfake video. We'll wait for the hands to go up. But I think, Bob, it's like, do you make a new video for every lead?
It depends. I take a look at people that are connecting with me, and if it looks like a connection that is worthwhile, not somebody trying to sell me something, but it's an actual contact, I'll make a quick 15 to 30-second video and put it into their inbox in LinkedIn, just thanking them for the connection. That's all. And that's all you have to do. It does not take long at all.
I love it because, I hate writing emails. So I think that's a great shortcut. Thank you. All right, Cassandra.
I'll make this quick because I know there are other questions. I just want to follow up on a question I saw in the chat about your planning doc. Less about like planning the podcast and more about the contract piece. Like, one, do you have a template for it? And two, like I don't know how, that's the piece that feels most fuzzy for me if that's something that I wanted to do.
Yeah, so I do have a template for it, and the contract is really just to allow me to do all the reposting that I want. So some companies like Enterprise Adobe will be like, no, you cannot repost until you have my logo, and our entire PR team has approved the content. And so this just excuses me from that, right? And it also allows them to repost as long as they tag me. So it excuses them for having to coordinate with me. I will say that some highly regulated banks or law firms will, obviously the law firm is going to redline and like change the contract on you, but you can negotiate that as well. And there are a lot of free contracts online. So the one in my template is also one of these like, standard boilerplate. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, the template that you have, is that accessible? Where could we find that?
Oh yeah, I mean, it's part of my class, but I can give you the overview, like the sections. And I guess I'll give everyone my phone number. So I'm going to give you all my phone number. You can, if you're like 1 minute before the podcast and the sound is not working, or you just want to talk, like, do you want to, do this? My number, I'm going to put in this chat, is 347-504-1509. And Bob, I hope you send me a video on that as well. All right, Ross.
Yeah, just unmute. Good, thanks. Yeah, so I'm just curious, there's many hosting services for podcasts. What do you recommend? We're a real estate brokerage looking to recruit agents. I use AI actually to generate podcasts on relevant real estate laws and anything to do with real estate. So it doesn't take me a lot of time to generate minute-long podcasts. But where do I host it? Do I link it to my website? I'm just not sure how the visibility side of it works.
Oh yeah, so I like the Substack because it's gives you a list of emails, right? LinkedIn newsletter will hide the emails from you. I also like Substack because it's public, so it's crawled by Google and like ChatGPT search engines. Okay. And I also like Substack because eventually you can paywall. You can be like, half of this episode is free, the other half is paid. So you can get passive income from, when you get famous to like, 100,000 followers. So
Okay.
that's where I host. But you know, with the website, I think you can host there too. So the fear of any platform is that they're going to delete or change the visibility on you. So you should definitely always host on your own website. And so it's like copy and paste. So like whatever you do on your Substack, you can just paste it into your website, but make sure that you always own the version, the final version, if that makes sense.
Okay, and when you say put it on your website, so is that like a plugin where I would have a podcast running on my website?
Yeah, so on your website, you can use like, I'm going to share my screen. So this is a website that I built with AI. It's a free tool called Pineapple Builder. This is a video, the video I showed, right? Because I streamed it through StreamYard to my LinkedIn, it also went to my YouTube. So on this website builder, I can add video and add like all the words that the co-pilot told me. So for example,
and same thing for audio. I mean, right now we're just doing the audio podcasts. So same thing, just do a plugin and it will just scroll all the episodes.
there's no plugin, you have to manually add it.
Okay.
Or you could try to set up an RSS feed from your blog to your website.
Okay.
But here, see, this is looking for a YouTube link. So from my StreamYard, I can say in my past episodes, view on YouTube, this is the YouTube link. And then I can put it
There we go. All right. Hi, Jay-Z.
Oh,
Hey, Audrey.
How you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. I'm so excited about this podcast.
sorry, that's
with you.
me.
Oh, great. I'm so excited.
So sorry, that was me. I was like, where's that coming from? Anyway, so, you know, in this AI website builder, I took the YouTube link, I pasted it into here, I saved it, and now it just shows up on my website. So then underneath, I would like add a text carousel. I would take all of this stuff, and in the text carousel, I would just paste it.
Okay, cool. And then should I push to things like Spotify for audio, like this podcast? What other platforms should I have it on?
Well, Spotify is probably the easiest. For Apple Podcasts, they make you jump through all these hoops. You have to have like higher resolution images. You have to have more episodes. So it's, I mean, diminishing returns, right? You have to focus on like your top 3 channels. So if I'm on 5 and I don't really focus on the last 2, 4 and 5, it's kind of a waste of my time. But yeah, Apple, Spotify, let me see on my Substack, they talk about in my podcast settings, show you. Here you edit your podcast settings, and these are the RSS feeds. So I have set up my Spotify RSS feed, but you can also set up your feed to YouTube, Pocket Cast, Overcast, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts.
Okay. Good. Great. Thank you.
Yeah, can I ask you, well, actually, I have 2 more hands up, so let's get in touch afterwards. But I'm curious how you like generate these fake 1-minute podcasts, or we'll talk more. Okay. All right. Henrik, go ahead.
I think Dan might have it. He's had it up earlier, but comment around the deepfake. I've used deepfake voices and deepfake video successfully on webinars and podcasts or webcasts and podcasts, mostly for narration because it's instant narration. It takes like literally minutes to type in a script, pick the voice you want, literally any voice, like hundreds of choices of voices, or your own for that matter. If you lose it, you can literally lose your voice permanently, or be dead and continue podcasting. That's literally the ability to do that. I fully automated my podcasts, but I was curious, aside from Copilot and Pineapple, what other AIs are you using for this process?
Yeah, so Minvo is the editing tool, and then I was going to show you this rap that I did with AI, but I have to find it. So there's this darling, yeah.
Sorry, just a reminder, we only have 5 minutes, so just we will have to end on time because I unfortunately have a call right after.
Yeah, absolutely. There's the darling of the AI world right now, HeyGen, and they are owned by 11 Labs. 11 Labs focuses on audio, and HeyGen focuses on video with audio. So I would say this is another deepfake favorite. All right. And we can, call me, we can chat on Slack, we can talk more. Dan, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to ask what you're using for deepfake. So you use this AI-powered video. What's the URL? Sorry, I can't see on my phone.
Oh, Hey, HeyGen. And
yeah, heygen.com, is that it?
Yeah. And then there's also air.ai. I mean, there's like hundreds, so happy to chat offline and give you my list.
Perfect.
I'm curious, the three of you who do deepfake, do you find that you sell more with deepfake?
I didn't see a difference, honestly, of more or less sales. It doesn't affect it at all because most people don't even realize it's fake because it passes the Turing test. It doesn't sound like a robot anymore. It's gone much better in the last few months. So you literally can't. It passes the Turing test where you can't tell the difference between a machine and a human.
What about Ross or Dan?
I would say we're too new at it. I've got some automation to take news feeds, convert them into podcasts. The video side, just playing with it presently.
Yeah, I think there is this promise of scale, right? With programmatic AI and programmatic advertising, you could just, put in your warm list, your cold list. The AI will spit out a video of you talking to each of those people as if it was you. And so it's the promise of scale. And I'm definitely, I don't know, I'm kind of like an in-person kind of person, but any of you who found success in it, I think maybe that's another lunch and learn. I'd love to hear more and connect.
Lovely. So thank you, Jay-Z, for this great lunch and learn. And thank you everyone for attending and all your great questions. Obviously, this is a hot topic. So we will post this recording later today or tomorrow in Slack, and as always in the Coda directory. And see you in Slack. Let me stop recording.
Thanks, Karina.